Hello and welcome. Welcome back to Conversations about Mental Health. My name is Todd Goldfinger, I'm your host, and we have two guests today, two very special guests. One of them is Frank Coppola, board-certified coach and mentor from New York City, all the way from New York City today, specializing in adults with ADD. And here I have my friend Dan, who I've known for maybe 26 years, who has ADD and PTSD, among other things.
Yes.
Nice to have you both on the show.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me here.
Great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So let's begin. We're going to talk to Dan, right? We're having a kind of a coaching today.
Yeah.
Yes?
Yeah.
Tell us what we're going to be doing.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a board certified coach and mentor. I specialize with adults with ADD. I've been doing this for probably 20 years of coaching, all different types. And what I like to do is to recognize, just as I have ADD, that when I discovered I had ADD, I immediately got very, very depressed, because the first thing I thought about is, great, I'm not crazy, but at the same time I thought, like, now what? This is like, I'm doomed. And after doing a lot of study on it, what I discovered was in a book written by a gentleman named Dr. Ned Hollowell. He was talking about it from a medical perspective, and then I found this very small paragraph that said, you know, people with ADD are enthusiastic, energetic. They, when they find something they love to do, they're very focused. And I said, wait a minute, that's me. I'm going to spend my time thinking about the things that are good about me as opposed to spending the time that are not good about me. And so I made a decision that I would focus in on that, working with people. And what I discovered was that people in general and in everywhere, when you're really focused on your strengths and the things that you love to do, there's a tendency for the symptoms of ADD to disappear, and that's what I wanted to talk with you about.
Sure.
Can you tell me a little about your ADD and how it affects you?
Well, it was mostly my school years. I had stopped taking, I was on Ritalin from a very young age, and it helped me to concentrate on homework and to understand what was going on in the class, and it prevented me from being a class clown, so to speak. When I didn't have my medicine, the teachers and everybody knew. And when I did have my medicine, no problem. I took myself off of Ritalin when I was in 7th grade because the stigma and, you know, being in school. I was in special ed, so you know, kids are kind of mean when you're in special ed or the small bus or whatever. And I was tired of getting called to the nurse's office in the middle of the day to take my medicine because kids are like, "What are you doing? Oh, you're weird," you know.
Yeah.
But had I stayed on the Ritalin, I would have done better in high school, and I would have probably done better in college. I flunked college. I just could not get my brain to wrap around the whole college thing.
Sure.
To focus.
To take notes. Notes was difficult to do, remembering everything, because in college, you've got freedom. You don't have to go to class. You know, there's no detention.
Yeah, it's
They're
so
just
true.
like, oh, so you fail, bye. You know, so I had a really hard time in college. And then I got older, and I started working on my mental health. I started going to therapy about 6 years ago, group therapy 3 years ago. And so now I'm at that point where I want to focus on all the issues that affect me, and ADD would definitely be one of them. I don't take meds for it. I use coping skills that I've learned in these programs that I'm in, and they help, but it just takes time and patience and practice. And
Yeah, it does. What are some of your symptoms? Like, where does it show up for you?
Oh, and in the middle of a conversation, my attention span will just, I'll completely forget what I'm being told. I'll completely forget what I'm talking about.
Right.
And which is embarrassing. You know, it makes me feel stupid.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because somebody's having a conversation with me and they expect the conversation to go a certain way, the way a conversation normally goes.
Right.
And I have to ask them to repeat themselves, or can you clarify, or I'm sorry, but I don't understand this.
You're actually doing the right thing there. So,
yeah,
can I give you a little coaching on that?
absolutely, anything.
I carry around with me all the time index cards. I don't have one with me, but they're over there somewhere. Little tiny index cards. And if I'm sitting down with somebody, I know my brain's going to start spinning off into Xenon, planet Xenon somewhere.
Okay.
And it usually has to do with somebody says something to me. It triggers a whole world, and it just spins me out. So when I have the index card, I'll say to the person, listen, I got this index card, I'm gonna make some notes because I don't want to miss anything that we're saying, right? Mm-hmm. So now, as they're talking, 9 times out of 10, it's boring, And so if I get that thought, I'll write it down. If I get that another thought, I'll write it down. Now I can go back to that place and be able to say to somebody, I didn't quite get that. Could you explain that to me one more time? Because now you've got some place that you can operate from.
Yeah.
So you may want to try that. I find that works pretty good.
I have a question right before you say, is ADD considered a mental illness?
It's considered a disorder. Okay, I don't.
A mental disorder?
Yeah, it's a disorder. It has to do with how the mind works. It has primarily to do with the prefrontal cortex.
Yeah, it's a brain thing, right? Like the brain isn't developed in a certain area.
Yeah, it's basically what's happening is the body is not producing enough dopamine in your system. All right, so the consequences of that is that you're unable to pay attention. You're more involved in hyperactivity, what they call executive functions. So ADD is a bioneurological disorder that affects the prefrontal cortex. Mm-hmm. And the prefrontal cortex is like the gatekeeper having to do with different areas of the brain. So the basal ganglia has to do with motion and things like that. But in reality, what it's also about is about choosing which one you're going to do first and the direction that you want to be going.
Decision-making skills.
Yes, all right. But there's the executive function. We could have a longer discussion about that, but let's just center in on that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So if you go into a room, because I used to have this, you go into a room and someone says, go clean up your room, go clean up your office. It'll take you, 20 minutes. Meanwhile, it could take me a lot longer than that, or a lot of the other people, it could take a lot longer than that. So what happens is that when you walk into the room, it's actually triggering something that happened a long, long time ago. So now you see this room and you go right into overwhelm. Then you have to make a choice about which one pushes you into overwhelm, stresses you. And then when it's setting a direction, it's similar to someone that gets into a car and you say, where we're going, and they go, I don't know, I'm just going to go.
Okay, so no real direction.
No real direction. But when that's all happening with the proper medication, you're able to make choices, determine how you want to approach this. Do I bring in a friend that's going to help me?
More rational thinking.
It really helps in that regard. As well as you've been doing a lot of work, I heard in the other show, about people that are coming in with, for lack of a better term, talk therapy and exercises and things like that.
And
So
coping skills.
it's a biological disorder that affects certain parts of the brain. Some people would call it mental illness. I don't call it that. What I like about your show is that it's a show about mental health.
Mental health,
Yeah.
right.
So, in that regard, I
It
think
fits.
it fits well. Yeah.
Good.
Question?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, when did you realize that you had ADD?
You know, it's interesting. I'll cut this short. I came home, and Diane, my love person, was sitting on the couch, and she was studying something.
Mm-hmm.
I said, "What are you doing?" She says, "Oh, I'm studying about business statistics." Now, business statistics for me was like, you know, put an ice stick in my eye. You know, it's like, what does that mean? And she says, "Well, you remember when we did these jobs for IBM? We both came out of the advertising business. She's still in it, and we did X, Y, and Z. If I would have used this particular rule, I would have saved the agency about $50,000. Mm-hmm. And I said, "How did you know that?" Mm-hmm. She said, "I read it." And I said, "There's something really wrong." "What do you mean?" I said, "I can't remember what I read. I can't remember what I read.
Okay.
I've made a lot of money for a lot of other people, but when it comes to me, I can't seem to put the pieces together." Then I went and got diagnosed. My doctor says, "Oh, you have ADD." And I said, he said, "I always knew you had ADD." So I said, "When were you going to tell me about
Yeah,
it?"
right.
So he put me on Ritalin,
Mm-hmm.
and within a half hour, boom, everything really clarified.
You were able to have comprehension.
Yeah, very clear. Yeah, very
So,
clear.
in this case, what's the difference between a learning disability and ADD? Because they could say you
learning
have,
disability is a subset of ADD. It comes out of it. It's a symptom of ADD. Okay, but it doesn't mean that everybody has learning disabilities.
Right.
It depends on the person, because everybody's so unique.
Because reading comprehension could be something that could constitute as a learning disability sometimes.
Yeah.
Right.
Let me give you an example.
Sure.
Of what I believe about attention deficit disorder.
Yeah.
Because my belief is that there's a stigma about attention deficit. But let me explain something.
Sure.
Quick question: what do you love to do? That when you're actually doing it, you're not even aware that you're doing it.
I like making lyrics to songs.
Great.
I like to express myself through words and music.
Good. So when you're doing that,
I'm focused like a laser beam.
right? Do you have any of the signs, symptoms of the behavior of somebody that has ADD in those moments?
At those moments, no.
Right.
It's interesting because I have like that laser focus, and with the guitar, it would be quality of repetition, and I'm really in it. I'm in it.
Right.
You know, but then when it's not that focus, my mind is everywhere.
Right.
I'm taking in so much information, it's overwhelming.
So when you think about it, how can you have a disorder if at certain times you're laser focused, right? So it's not attention deficit disorder. It could be called attention abundance disorder. ADD could be called motivational disorder because it has a lot to do with motivation, right? But to just keep that in mind when you're actually thinking, well, I have attention deficit disorder, but the other side of it is I have attention deficit disorder, but I also have this other thing that's very positive. Can I show you something?
Yes, please.
There are universal laws, okay? There's 7 of them. And I'm going to show you just one universal law called the universal law of polarity, all right?
Okay.
Whoop. Sorry about that. Can I move with this?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. All right, let me just move this over. How am I doing, guys? Can you hear me okay? So, this is universal law of polarity. Now, what does that mean? Give you an example. You're in a room, I put you in a room, right? And you're in a chair, there's lights on, I stepped out of the room, and what happens is dark shows up, right? Shut the light off, dark shows up. What happened to the light? Where did it go?
It's off.
Yeah, but where did it go? You okay? We okay here? Where did the light go?
Disappeared.
Okay, now
It's been
it
shut off.
disappeared. Now I go back and I turn the light on. Where did the dark go?
Disappeared.
Well, in actuality, it didn't disappear. It's still there. It's like electricity, you know? It's like you turn on the light's there. You turn it off, the dark's there. It's the same thing. It occupies the same space.
But it's been changed.
Right. So now, a lot of times people say, I don't have any money.
Versus,
I have money, right? So, no money, money. A lot of the times, just because you can't see something doesn't mean it's not there. It's like we're here, but US6 is out there. How do you know US6 is out there?
right, how do you know it exists?
Right. But it does, because you go outside and there's US6. So too with attention deficit disorder. If you're having an issue and you're feeling like, gee, you know what, things are not going well. The first thing you need to do is to become aware, like, my goodness, that's what I said. And the other guy is immediately turn it to the other side of it, because it must be there. There's no reason why you can't say, yeah, I'm not feeling well, but at the same time, I am well. Why? Universal law of polarity. Universal laws are like, one is the universal law of gravity. You step off a 17th floor window, gravity doesn't care whether you think it should go up.
Right.
You will go down. It's
Whether
a
you believe in
universal
it or
law.
not, right.
It never changes. Is that clear?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. See? What are you good at?
What am I good at?
Yeah, you just told me. Your lyrics.
Yeah, lyrics. I like to play with words and draw word pictures so that when you read the word or hear the words, you see it in your head.
Yeah, that's great.
It's fun.
That's great. I'd love to hear some of your music.
Cool. No problem.
Great.
We all would. That means you have to record it
Well, you can come here and play it.
or play it.
Yeah.
I'm shy.
Shy?
I'm delicate.
Delicate.
But when I heard you talking before, one of the things I admired about you is that you had really become aware. And that's one of the great things about moving into a healthy place. The awareness that something is not going well, and to be able to really step back and say, you know, things are not going well, but at least I'm aware of it. Now what can I do about it? And there's a great saying that a buddy of mine once said to me, action relieves depression. So if you can actually say, I'm not really feeling well, and you could add action relieves whatever you wanted to. You can also say action relieves depression, which allows me to do other things, but at least I'm aware of it. And now let me get into action. Let me do something.
Yeah, I believe it's important to be aware of your body sensations.
Yes.
Because a lot of it is not just in the mind. You know, like if you get nervous, you might have sweaty palms. That's a reaction. For me, with what I've been through, I have heavy reactions that get triggered, and I have physical symptoms from what's going on in my mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly
So-
right. Yeah, we all do
'Cause
that. You, sure.
When I feel the chest pain from anxiety, I can acknowledge it and then use a breathing exercise or whatever might help at the time.
And to do something about it.
Yeah.
Get into action. Perfect. That's great.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
Very good. You also have PTSD,
Yeah, I do.
right?
Yes, and it sucks.
And it's horrible, right?
Yeah, Yeah, I don't know how far into that you want me to go, but
Well, we talked in the last episode about your eye
the eye
operations,
surgeries, yeah.
surgeries and things like that, and an upbringing that was less than copacetic.
Less than copacetic.
Right. So there were factors that were involved that made you have
PTSD.
which is a very real thing.
Yeah.
It prevents you from working.
Unfortunately, and that's embarrassing. But it's real.
It's very real.
You know, it was referred to me as the invisible illness. Sometimes I wish that like I had a severed leg so you can see that I have a problem, that it's difficult for me to do things. But this is an invisible illness that's in my head that I need to work out and work on and practice. And people have referred to me as highly functional, even though I go through these things. But even though I'm highly functional and I have the ability to be aware of my senses and physical whatever, I still suffer from it, you know. And it bothers me that people can't see what I go through unless I'm in a situation where I can articulate it and explain it and give some detail and some background. But that takes time. You know, if you saw me with a severed leg, you'd be like, let me help that guy. You see me walking down the road, you probably won't even say hello.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm sorry, it's interesting because the fact remains is that when you actually are in the experience of the PTSD, you can't be aware of it because you're right in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And then when you can step back from it, but it's also very hard. One of my closest friends in the world was in Vietnam and he had PTSD. And he didn't know he had it for like 30, 40 years until he went to San Francisco. He went to the VA and they said, oh, you have PTSD. Meanwhile, if I were to tell you what this guy has accomplished and how he sabotaged himself at the same time. Right. Because of this PTSD. It's a very, very serious problem. And I'm glad you're doing something about it.
That's good.
Yeah.
He wasn't able to see the forest from the trees.
He wasn't able to see a lot of different things. And he was a very angry guy. Sweet, but angry at the same time. And it was all because of what was going on inside that he couldn't get a handle on. It's tough thing.
I'd like to add something to that. With my PTSD, I get the impression that people understand that someone can go to war and come back, and then people sympathize, oh my God, he's got PTSD from the war and whatever. I didn't go to war.
Right.
I had a horrible childhood, and then I had 4 eye surgeries.
Which was like a war.
Yeah, I mean, people can't imagine that just growing up can be equal to going to war.
Without a doubt.
And there are some bad parents out there. There are some bad situations. There are things that can destroy a child. And it's not war, but it kind of is. You know, torture is torture. Having the surgery without anesthesia and being awake for the surgery was kind of torture.
Yeah, it's traumatic, without a doubt. I have PTSD due to my childhood as well, so I can very much relate to that. And you didn't know growing up, you just did what you did.
Is there anything that can cure PTSD? Now, I asked this as a question that I kind of know a little bit of an answer to, which is that have you heard anything about MDMA being used to treat PTSD?
I'm not aware. I think I know what you're talking about MDMA. I understand that that's a very, very good, for lack of a better term, discipline. I understand it's very, very good.
It's very helpful.
Yeah.
I've tried it.
Yeah. A lot of people have. They told me about it, and I want to look into it.
It's really helpful. It really cleared up a lot of things for me.
Right.
Right. Very low doses of that. And it was very helpful. And now I feel a lot better. I did some experimentation of microdosing with psilocybin, which actually helped my depression a great deal as well. So there's certain things like that.
Well, certainly medication is a good way to go if you can find the right doctor who can give you the right prescription all the time.
the legal medications that are out there today.
Yeah.
That's on the market.
Yeah.
Good. So we only have a couple of minutes. Is there anything that you would like to tell the audience and to share?
Basically, what I'm going to say to you is that whenever you think that there's something wrong, most likely you're disturbed at something. You're in disease at something. Dis-ease. So to understand that there are places that you can go to get help, even if it's a good friend who's not going to be critical to you. There's things like talk therapy. There are programs that you can be in. And of course, there are medications that you can be taking. And my recommendation is that you look into all those things, because nobody should be suffering. Because we were not put on this earth to suffer. We were actually put on this earth to be abundant and to move forward and live in a good life.
Very good. Excellent.
Thank you.
I want to add also, if things get really bad for a person, that there are hotlines that can be called as well.
Very good point.
You know, if things get so bad that you just don't want to live anymore. I have a friend who has PTSD from being at 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to have him on the show sometime, but I'm not sure if he's going to do it.
Sure.
He desperately needs treatment, and it's very hard because he is a tough guy. He says, but I'm a tough guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, I think it would be good to go to a group or to talk to somebody.
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, we only have 1 minute left. So, Dan?
Yeah.
Would you like to say anything?
There's a lot of help that's available if people go on the internet and really try to get the help that they need. They could have a better quality of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really what it's all about, is having a better quality of life and feeling worth it to put the time into it. Mm-hmm. And practice what you learn like every day as much as you can. And don't beat yourself. I think it's good to be gentle.
Don't beat yourself up.
It's good to be gentle with yourself.
Be a good friend.
And be gentle with others.
Excellent point. Really excellent points. Very good.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been Conversations About Mental Health. I'm your host, Todd Goldfinger. Here we have Frank Coppola and Dan Ingersoll. Thank you for joining us.
Thank
Have a great